Okay, Jim?
Okay, Jim.
Right. Wel, croeso cynnes iawn I bawb i'r cyfarfod yma heddiw. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's special meeting of the General Licensing Committee, where we are all attending remotely. I'm Councillor John Roberts. I am Vice Chair of the General Licensing Committee, but I am chairing this meeting today. I can confirm that a sound check has been conducted before the start of the meeting, so I assume everyone can hear me. Everybody okay? Right, okay. In addition to committee members, we also have non-committee members, cabinet members, officers and public speakers joining us to assist with our discussions. For those viewing the stream, committee members are identified with an asterisk next to their name. Can I remind members that translation facilities are available a mae croeso I chi siarad yn Gymraeg os da chi isio. You're welcome to speak in Welsh if you want. If you wish to speak, please use the raise hand function on your Zoom screen. And you can also use the chat facility, but please note I may not be able to monitor the chat facility during the meeting. All microphones will be muted. If you have indicated your intention to speak, you'll be invited to turn your microphone on. If you leave your device for any reason, can you please ensure you are muted and that you turn your video off? Thank you. Now, today's meeting is to discuss an application for a rail crossing extinguishment order for public footpath number 73, Deganwy, under the S118A Highways Act 1980. Before we start the meeting, I'll just explain the order of speakers and then we'll go to the actual agenda. The Council, Mr. Andrew Wilkinson will present his report on behalf of the Council, and that will be followed by a Network Rail spokesperson, which Andrew will introduce. Then we have from the objector side, the Right Honourable Robin Miller MP will speak, and we hope, unfortunately, that because of a clash of meetings, Mrs. Janet Finn-Saunders won't be able to join us until later on in the meeting, but she hopes to be there, or to be with us anyway. So we go to the agenda. Item 1 is apologies. Have we got any, Jane?
Yes, apologies from Councillors Matt Bradfield, Philip Evans, and Dave Roberts.
Thank you for that. Item 2, declarations of interest. Members are reminded that they must declare the existence and nature of the declared personal interest. Anyone who declares an interest will be asked to wait in the waiting room when the time comes. Have we got any? None. Item 3, urgent matters. I'm not aware of any. Jane, have you got anything?
There are no urgent matters.
Thank you very much. So we'll go to item 4, the main item on the agenda. To consider the report by the Head of Environment, Roads and Facilities on the following matter. Application for a rail crossing extinguishment order for public footpath number 73, Deganwy, under the S118A Highways Act. And this will be presented by Andrew Wilkinson. Andrew, over to you.
Diolch, Cadeirydd. So I'm Andy Wilkinson. I'm Head of Neighbourhood Services and the Chief Officer with responsibility for highways and rights of way in Conwy, and I'll be presenting the officer's report with a recommendation to members. I won't be presenting on screen. I'm assuming everyone has the agenda pack. I'll be referring to sections of the report and appendices as I go through my initial speech here. So just to start with, this has been one of the most difficult highway matters we've had to deal with in recent years, certainly that I've had to deal with in sort of nearly 10 years dealing with highways involving conflict in priorities, strong feelings, community ownership and opinions on an asset, and some complex legislation. And as many members will know, I know this area of De Gamwy very well. So it's been a difficult matter for us, but Conwy officers have done their best to review all the information, bring it all together and provide all the evidence to members to make a decision. So as Councillor Roberts says, an application has been received from Network Rail to extinguish public footpath number 73. It's made under section 118A of the Highways Act 1980, and the council has powers under that act to make rail crossing orders and consider whether the proposals in the application meet the requirements as set out in the legislation. So I'm hoping everyone knows where this is. It's on the southern side of Glanamore Road on the Llandudno to Llandudno Junction branch line, opposite the junction of Pentwyn Road and Warren Drive. And the right-of-way starts adjacent to the lay-by and bus stop, crosses the railway lines for a distance of approximately 30 metres, intersects with National Cycle Path 5, and public rights extend to the foreshore as confirmed by the definitive map modification order. Plan of the location is at Appendix 3. And just to note, I said intersects with the National Cycle Route Coastal Path. Coastal Path at this location is not a public right of way, it's a permissive path operated under licence from Network Rail to Sustrans. So the relevant legislation we're dealing with here is section 118A of the Highways Act. And this paragraph 1 of 118A says that an order shall be made where it appears to a council expedient in the interest of the safety of members of the public, using it or likely to use it, that a footpath or bridleway which crosses a railway should be stopped up. So that's the power to make the order. Then paragraph 4 says the Secretary of State or the council shall not confirm the order unless they are satisfied it's expedient to do so, having regard to all the circumstances and in particular whether it's reasonably practical to make the crossing safe for use by the public. So those are two sections referring to making and confirming of the order, and I'll come back to that distinction later on in my presentation. So the decision for members today is to make the order or not make the order. This isn't a debate about whether this is a footpath or not, whether it's a public right of way or not, its history of use, its justification for being a path. It is a public right of way that was determined by planning inspector and upheld at Court of Appeal. This is a decision as to whether the crossing is safe to use or can reasonably practically be made safe to use. And the other point to note is this meeting today and this decision today is likely to be the start of a process. If a decision is made today to make the order, it does not mean the crossing will never be opened. If a decision is made not to make the order, it does not mean the crossing will be open tomorrow or next week. What will happen is if it is resolved to make the order, then that will be advertised and representations invited, be they objections or expressions of support. And if objections are received, then the order will need to be submitted to Welsh Government for determination by public inquiry or written representation or other means as the Minister sees fit. If the order is made and not opposed, then the Council may confirm the order itself. But as we've seen from representations, at least one stakeholder has expressed their intention to object if an order is made. So it's highly unlikely that it would be determined unopposed. If that members resolve not to support the extinguishment order, then the applicant, Network Rail, can request that the Minister makes the extinguishment order. And again, that decision would then be referred to Welsh Government for determination at inquiry or other means. So in deciding whether to approve the making of the order or not, members will need to balance the authority's duty to protect and keep open public rights of way with the safety of the public who would be using that right of way. Officers have produced this report, which brings together the evidence and includes a recommendation. In order to do this, we've utilised the knowledge and experience of a number of experts, both internal and external, who are here today and will be able to assist with any questions that I'm not able to answer personally. So we've got here Caroline Turner is our definitive map officer with a huge amount of experience and knowledge of public rights of way and definitive map modification orders. Simon Billington, our open spaces manager, who has overall responsibility for public rights of way. We've got Alex Strickland, who's the solicitor acting for the authority. He's in place of Richard Jarvis, who's been involved in this case for the last 2 to 3 years now, I think, as the council solicitor, but has since left the authority. We have Mr. Eric Owen here, who's a barrister and specialist in highway and public right-of-way law, who has provided his expert opinion, and Peter Todd from SCP Consultants, who is our independent rail safety expert. So that's the background to the legislation and the process, and I'll now move on to the details of the application. So Network Rail submitted their initial application with reasons for extinguishment in March 2021. And in May, we carried out consultation with local members, town council, and other key stakeholders on that application. There was some delay then in receiving the full impact assessment and all the information we required from Network Rail, which finally arrived in November of last year. But in the interim, we sought the advice of SCP as our independent rail safety expert, and that was on the recommendation of our barrister. And it's important to note that SCP carried out their assessment prior to receiving Network Rail's impact assessment. So it's a standalone and independent assessment of the situation. So Network Rail will be speaking in support of the application, and you have in your agenda packs their full report, and our summary of the key points is in the committee report. If you refer to section 3.14 of the committee report, it describes that the main hazard here really is the geometry of the railway track north of the right-of-way, so that's in the Deganwy direction, where there is a reverse curve or S-bend, if you like, which causes an approaching train to disappear completely from view before reappearing closer to the crossing, such that the user may briefly see the train in the distance and mistakenly conclude it's moving away from them as it moves out of sight. They will then commit to crossing the railway when the train is actually rapidly approaching. And I'm sure Network Rail will expand on that in their presentation. So they have considered the options to mitigate this deficiency in sight lines and hazard to users of the crossing, including a bridge or underpass, miniature stoplights, repositioning the crossing, line speed restrictions, rescinding the coastal path licence. But their report concluded that the crossing cannot be made safe for public use, and if it was to be reopened against their advice, then they would need to carry out mitigations to reduce the risk, including realigning the crossing, line speed restrictions, and terminating the coastal path licence. Now it's up to us as the council, the order making authority, to interrogate this evidence before coming up with a recommendation. We are not rail safety experts, and therefore we engaged the advice in the form of Mr. Todd of SCP, and SCP's report is in your agenda pack with the main points summarised in the committee report. SCP concluded that the crossing in its current form was not safe to use, in particular the deficient sight lines for users crossing from the estuary side, similar to Network Rail's submission. Mitigations were considered, including realignment of the crossing, whistle boards, miniature stoplights, or full segregation by means of a bridge or underpass. But SCP concluded that although there are viable measures to improve the general standard of the crossing and to reduce risk somewhat, they still do not mitigate the safety concerns associated with substandard sight lines. In Network Rail's report, there was a detailed technical explanation of the issues with miniature stoplights at this location, their impact on signalling and train movements, etc. But SCP's conclusion was that even if these could be overcome, the introduction of miniature stoplights would not fully remove the safety risk, as they depend on users adhering to those signals, which couldn't be guaranteed. SCP assessed the alternative routes available to the coastal path via the A56 northwest to Deganwy Quay and southeast to Conway Bridge, and these routes were assessed by a traffic engineer and qualified road safety auditor at their site visit. The conclusion was that there are alternative safe routes and locations to cross the railway line to gain access to the coastal path without resulting in a material increase in journey length or restricting access to key facilities and destinations. And SCP's conclusion was therefore the closure of the crossing would be in the best interest of the safety of members of the public. So that's Network's summary of Network Rail's submission and SCP's independent assessment. But part of the report and our considerations and for members' consideration are the representations from the public and key stakeholders, which are in the appendices of the report and also some in the body of the report. And just a summary of some of those. The cabinet member, Councillor Greg Robbins, does not support closure, understands the reason for the recommendation of his officers, but feels that Network Rail should make greater efforts to design a safe facility. The local members, Councillor Shotter, Councillor Cotton and Councillor Priestley, object to the extinguishment and do not agree with Network Rail's case that the crossing cannot be made safe for use. Our local MP, Mr. Robin Miller, who's here today and will be speaking, has made representation and submitted the table of comments, which is in Appendix 5. This is a detailed rebuttal of Network Rail's reasons for extinguishment and proposes that a package of measures, including changing alignment of the crossing, introducing gates and ramps and miniature stoplights, and also states that they're in their opinion, there's no need to reduce the line speed at that location. Ramblers Cymru objects to the extinguishment, believe the crossing can be made safe for use if Network Rail seriously applies its mind to the issue, was their quote, and they propose an alternative of diversion or relocation with extension of land out into the foreshore if more space is required. And they also dispute that reduction of line speed would impact on the rail timetable. Sestrans and Natural Resources Wales responses focused on concerns regarding potential revocation of the licence for the coastal path in the main and not directly related to the crossing itself. We then had the very important and strong views of members of the public objecting and raising various points, most mentioning that this is a historic right of way, which is not in dispute. As I said earlier, that has been confirmed through all the entire legislative process. Opinions were expressed that a degree of risk inherent in using a rail crossing should be accepted as worth the benefit of having the crossing in place, or alternatively that they believe that measures could be introduced to make the crossing safe. And I want to draw attention at this time to one of those measures which was considered in both the Network Rail report and SCP report, and that is a bridge at this location. Now, a bridge, of course, would remove risk of crossing the railway on the public right-of-way completely or almost completely. In previous correspondence and discussions, including, I believe, at the inquiry, it was agreed by that a footbridge was not reasonably practicable. And if you look at page 81 of your pack, paragraphs 32 to 34, you'll see that those points being made. It was not addressed in detail in the officer's report, but certainly recent correspondence we've received, and I'm sure there'll be discussion here today that a bridge is a potential solution. Our Network's Rail position is that a bridge has been discounted from their options due to the available footprint, the topography of the area, the adjacent highway, the impact on residential properties, and the cost. And they've stated an estimate of between 1.5 million and 3.5 million pound, depending on whether it was a stepped crossing, which of course would not be accessible to bicycles, wheelchairs, buggies, etc., or if a ramped crossing at the fully accessible ramped crossing at the higher value. Now, given our knowledge of the site and experience in design and costing structures in coastal areas, this cost estimate we think is reasonable, in fact, if not optimistic. A bridge here is likely to require realignment of Glanamore Road, consideration of where the estuary side landing pad would be, possibly as sort of Rambler stated, require an extension of the rock revetment out into the estuary, how the bridge would be supported given the estuary ground conditions. So therefore we are accepting at this stage, based on the evidence we have, that the bridge is not a reasonably practicable measure. It should also be noted that it does not mean a bridge is not possible. You know, and with engineering, anything is possible at a cost. But the possibility of a bridge is not sufficient to reject the application. Referring back to the legislation, again, the difference between the making of the order and the confirmation of the order. To make the order, the council must just consider whether it's expedient to the safety of the members of the public. It's before confirming the order that the minister or the council must be satisfied that it's not reasonably practicable to make the crossing safe for use by the public, which would include considerations of whether that cost was reasonable and made the measure reasonably practicable. So just to conclude here, and to give everyone else a chance to speak and for us to have a good debate about this. Again, what I said at the beginning, it's a very difficult recommendation to make. As individual officers, as the open spaces section, as a service with our active travel agenda and policy, and for the council as a whole, we are committed to promoting and providing infrastructure for walking and cycling. We are constantly looking for ways to increase access and secure funding for major improvements to this infrastructure. And we take very seriously our duty to assert, protect and keep open public rights of way and public highways. And once again, just to remind everyone, again, the status of the crossing is not in doubt. as confirmed by the Planning Inspector and Court of Appeal, and the council is fully aware of the value in which it is held by local residents. However, with the safety evidence available for consideration at this time, our conclusion is that meets the requirements of section 118A, paragraph 1 of the 1980 Act, and we've received unequivocal legal advice on that, and therefore our conclusion is we have no option but to make the recommendation for a rail crossing extinguishment order to be made for footpath number 73. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Andrew. A very concise, very informative introduction to what we're here for today. I'm now going to call the speakers, and I think the first one is Network Rail. Who's speaking on their behalf? I can't see anything. Anybody
Hi,
there?
sorry. Yes, sorry. Just trying to unmute.
Oh, it's you, Christine. Welcome.
Yes.
Welcome to the meeting.
Thank you. Right, well, hi, everyone. My name's Christine Booth, and I lead on level crossings for Wales Route. I'm responsible for a portfolio of over 1,000 level crossings and have a team of 25 who manage the risk. We're all based in Wales Route and only work for Wales Route. And this representation is made in support of the Section 118A Highways Act application to extinguish footpath 73 in Conway. Additional information in the form of an impact assessment report has also been provided to the council to assist the case that's been put forward. So why this location? Why is it so different to others in the area, and why does it need to remain closed? This location is like the perfect storm. There are so many hazards all together in one place. You have the estuary and busy A road, the complex railway infrastructure, and an urban area and popular tourist location. Noise from the estuary and constant flow of traffic make it difficult to hear the train approaching, and the newer trains are even quieter, so this risk will only increase. Users may mistake the train horn for that of a vehicle or a boat, and sea mist and poor weather restrict visibility, making it difficult for users to see or hear the train approaching. And changing underfoot conditions make traversing the crossing slower and increase the risk of slips, trips and falls. The complex railway infrastructure means sighting times are deficient for users to cross safely after first seeing a train. And the series of track curves pose a particular and unique risk. A user may see the train, and when they look again, the train is no longer in sight. So they mistakenly think it's going the other way and start to cross when it's actually travelling towards them at line speed. The points and crossovers give rise to varying arrival times due to varying speeds of the trains, and users may think they have time to cross in front of a train when they don't. A train travelling in one direction can block visibility of a train travelling in the opposite direction, and a user may step out after the one train has passed into the path of the train travelling the other way. Looking forward in the aspirations of train operating companies to increase services and potentially the number of carriages would only increase this risk. It has been suggested that technology could be installed to provide additional warning for users, and this has been explored as an option. Technology, however, is expensive mitigation, which does not prevent use of the crossing or mitigate user behaviour. And distraction is a huge risk on the railway. There are many things which can distract users. The area sees tourists all year round. Some may return year on year, but others will be new to the area, and some may not have even seen a crossing over the railway before. Tourists are in holiday mode. Children excited about getting to the beach, parents with far too many bags to carry, trying to keep an eye on the children. Walkers and cyclists exploring the area in groups, some small, some large. Visitors to the marina or hotel, out discovering the area. Unfortunately, we have examples in Wales, far too many, of families taking photos of their children, themselves, and the view whilst they're standing in the middle of the tracks. These are only some examples of vulnerable use, which it would be reasonable to expect to find at this location, and all of which significantly increase the risk at this crossing. The permissive cycleway cannot be overlooked, as it's the main reason anyone would want to use the crossing, and therefore has a significant impact on the risk. The path is not a public right-of-way. It is on railway land under licence to Sustrans. And the public right-of-way over the railway, footpath 73, ends at the railway fence and is what is known as a cul-de-sac route. It does not link into any other public right-of-way network. Users of this type of route would cross over and then cross back again, as the route doesn't go anywhere. And purely by its nature, a cul-de-sac route does not attract high usage. This particular crossing is unique due to the fact that permissive cycleway has been presumed to give continued access from the footpath scheduled over the crossing, creating a through route when it doesn't. The only feasible way of reducing the risk to as low as reasonably practicable is to reduce the numbers and types of users, which would mean the permissive cycleway would need to close. The passion in the community to keep the crossing has not been ignored, and we have looked at various options, including a footbridge and underpass, but neither are feasible due to the close proximity of the estuary and the restricted footprint of an overbridge. Both of these options would not be reasonably practicable measures to take. Anything else other than closing the cycleway does not reduce risk at this location to as low as reasonably practicable. Comparisons have been made with other crossings on the North Wales coast, but each crossing is unique and has to be assessed as such. Out of all the crossings on the Wales route, there isn't another crossing where so many hazards are all together at one location. No option but closure removes the risk, and any mitigations only reduce some of the risks, but not to a level that can be classed as low as reasonably practicable. We therefore respectively ask that the Section 118A order is supported. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Christine. And you were nearly spot on with the timing as well. I appreciate that. If you stay with us, of course, there will be questions for you later on. Okay, thank you. Now I have, I think I'm right in saying it's the Right Honourable Robin Miller, MP. Are you there, Robin?
I am, thank you. Diolch, Cadeirydd. Thank you,
Okay.
Chairman. It is, I should just correct you, Right Honourable means a member of the Privy Council, and that's reserved for people significantly above my pay grade.
You never know, Robin, where things are going. You might be there quite soon.
Well, only if there's a vacuum above and you get sucked up into it. Yes, I know the feeling.
Sorry,
Chair,
take care.
Chair, thank you very much. I'm sorry, I wasn't aware there's a time limit. How long would you like me to be?
Well, I think Christine was about 5 minutes, or if you could.
I'll do my very best, Chair, to wrap
Thank
up
you.
that. So first of all, may I just declare that Councillor Sam Cotton, who's cited in this evidence and to whom I will refer at one point, she is actually an employee of my office here. I don't think it's a declarable interest, but just in the interest of transparency, I wanted people to be clear about that. First of all, thank you all for the effort that's gone into this. It's a comprehensive pack of evidence. I've enjoyed going through it, and clearly a lot of time and energy has been put into that. So thank you for the care and attention that's gone to it. This is very much the continuation of work done by my predecessor and those in my office here, leading up to the determination of the public right-of-way on the 18th of July 2019. I'm indebted to that work and that body of evidence that was created around then. So I'm very much picking up and carrying the baton from that, and I only hope I can do it justice for residents. I think it's helpful to mention my own experience in this. I found as a councillor in Suffolk, where I had to deal with Network Rail and a package of level crossing closures which they sought there in a novel legal process where they brought a bundle of closures in one legal motion to the courts to determine. I found them to be complex, vexed, and always, I have to say, level crossings pose a risk. And the only way to remove that risk in its entirety is to close level crossings. And that, I believe, in practice, if not in word, is what Network Rail seek to do. For various reasons, perfectly understandable commercial reasons of speed of transport, etc., and as I say, safety itself. That said, my priorities in this are first that residents' voices are heard, and I'd like to recognise the contributions of Councillors Cotton, Councillor Shotter, Councillor Priestley, Cabinet Member Councillor Robbins, and also the Member of the Senedd, Janet Finch-Saunders, in doing exactly that and speaking up for residents, adding to my own voice in this. My second priority is the safety of residents. Now, having established a right of way, which I stress was contested by Network Rail, the principle then must be, the priority then must be to do what we're doing today, which is consider the safety. And indeed, this hearing has been triggered by Network Rail as a mechanism we agreed with them in conversation of exploring this question of safety. So first, some quick observations. As I say, this is a comprehensive evidence pack for which I'm grateful. And in particular, I welcome paragraph 3.19 of the Council's report, which draws attention to the fact that this is referred to throughout by Network Rail as a cul-de-sac pathway. But it's disappointing to me that they do so, given that the inquiry, the planning inspector's decision, as quoted in paragraph 3.9, was to recognise this has been used by the public to access the foreshore. That is the right of way that was established. So it's very important, and it's disappointing to me that Network Rail still refused to acknowledge that finding. I also note in paragraph 3.11 of the officer's report on page 6, the construct of the options there by Network Rail, which is helpful to understanding this. The first point I'd like to make is I'd like to note the conclusion of the SCP report in paragraph 3.24 on page 11, that although there are viable measures to improve the general standing of crossing and reduce risk, they still do not mitigate the safety concerns associated with substandard sightlines. This to me seems to be a key issue of the safety question, which I said frames this discussion. May I give offer my thanks to the Council as well for the diligence in recognising limitations and actually commissioning this piece of work, which I think is very helpful to making our representations and determinations today. However, paragraph 3.21 on page 10 of the officer report sets out 6 bullet points which suggest that the large majority of objections can be addressed, ranging from inappropriate surfacing through to inadequate levels of lighting. And indeed, paragraph 3.22 then makes the point that it is the sightings and the sightings distance which is key in this. If I could refer to page 62 of the, that's the SCP, page 62 of the bundle, that's the SCP report, and paragraph 4.9 of theirs. It talks about how improvements could be made, but the required sighting distance for users will still be in the region of 179 metres, which is less than the 290 metres required. Paragraph 3.24, as I quoted before, makes the point that then that this does the measures proposed still do not mitigate the safety concerns associated. However, at this point, Chairman, if I could refer you to page 63 of the bundle, which is the SCP report, paragraph 4.13, it makes 3 comments. First, that miniature stoplights are used at level crossings where sightings are restricted, where sightlines are restricted. Paragraph 4.15, it is clear that this technology is being used by Network Rail to reduce risk at level crossing. And if I may draw attention to paragraph 4.14, it says this system replaces a stop, look and listen system that relied on users checking that there was no train approaching. And this point of users checking really highlights this issue of risk. There is always some risk attached to a level crossing. And I would suggest the question here for us today is about the level of risk that we think is acceptable in it. And are we looking just at numbers, or are we looking at that question of responsibility for risk and residents? So in my own submission on, if I refer to page 84, page 16, my submission refers to page 84 of the bundle and the response we offered to paragraph 39 of the Network Rail responses. And this is dealing exactly with this issue of sightings. And we made the point there that an inquiry, a public inquiry, could consider whether a package of measures set out would make the crossing acceptably safe. And we don't think that Network Rail have given proper consideration to this. Coming to a conclusion then, Chairman, what I would suggest is that, first of all, I support the positions of councillors Cotton, Shotter, Robbins, Priestley, regarding their objections set out on page 16. I'm supportive of the comments. I'm supportive of the comments made by various members of the public and groups, such as the Ramblers on page 121 of the bundle. And I would ask the committee to respectfully to consider not extinguishing the crossing, and mindful of your comments at the start, introductory comments at the start, Mr. Wilkinson, about the likelihood of a public inquiry, that would then become the place where these questions that still remain about safety mitigation could be considered. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Miller, and I apologise for giving you a title at the beginning.
Not at all.
Right. I don't think we have Janet Finch Saunders here with us.
Not yet.
No, not yet. Okay, so I'll go to questions. If anybody has any questions for anyone who's here today to help us, then I can take them in the order that the hands go up. And the first one is Councillor Harry Saville.
Oh, thank you, Chairman. I might want to come back in later, but there were a couple of questions that sprung to my mind in the first instance. I don't know if Christine would be best to answer these from Network Rail's side. The first one relates to obviously the stretch of coastal path, which, you know, we've touched on. It's not a recognised public right of way. It's a path that exists on land that Network Rail have allowed Sustrans to place a path along. What I'd like to understand is, obviously, prior to Network Rail entering into that decision prior to 2011, that was obviously safe. Surely Network Rail said to Sustrans, you can have your coastal path alongside the railway line, knowing full well there's a level crossing there to provide access to it. And surely at the time, Network Rail must have been of the opinion that that was safe. If they weren't of that opinion, then I can only say it shows a contemptuous disregard for public safety on the part of Network Rail. So I'd like to understand why Network Rail clearly felt it was safe pre-2011 and what has changed apart from the one near miss recorded in 2011. The other question I had was in relation to the overlay miniature stoplights, and I think the main objection to those has been that if you're looking at it from a perspective of a driver working at a down service leaving Llandudno Junction, you strike in for the MSL, you then potentially hit a signal which could be on, you'd be held at the signal for an indeterminate amount of time. You then proceed, and that would potentially vary the amount of time that the MSL has to let the public know that they're able to use the crossing safely. Surely, though, that issue could, or you could have an issue if you had a work service, if you had any sort of irregular working, where a train isn't going to travel down that section of line at normal line speed. So I'd like to know how MSLs operate safely on lines where there is a potential for regular working, which I would have thought would have been the entire rail network, and how MSLs also operate when you have works and maintenance services that might need to stop along the rail route. Because I can't, I mean, based on the logic in the report that argues against the use of an overlay miniature stoplight system, I can't see how it would be safe to use anywhere on the rail network. I could be wrong. Obviously, I'm not a professional, but I'd be grateful if those 2 points could be addressed.
Thank you, Councillor Harry. I think your questions are for Christine, unless somebody else wants to come in as well. But Christine, can I bring you back in, please?
Hi, yes. I'm not technical and I'm not an engineer. So some of those questions probably need to go and we need to get back to you on them. However, if there's engineering works or degraded working on the railway, then there's things put in place. So, for instance, we would put forward to close a crossing temporarily while works were carried out. So we would prevent use of the crossing in some cases. So it's not that it's not possible. It's not that it's not possible to put in place, but it doesn't remove the risks, all of the risks there that are as low as reasonably practical. It takes away some of the risks, and it improves things for the user by warning them that the train's arriving. But it doesn't take away, it doesn't stop people using the crossing. It doesn't mitigate user behaviours. And certainly people, just like on the roads, don't always take notice of the red light, especially if they can see a train in the distance approaching. They think they can cross in front of it.
Okay, thank you. Harry, you may want to come back later on.
Yeah, could I come back on a couple of those points now, Chair?
I have other people waiting, but I'll allow it if it's
Okay,
brief.
just quickly. I mean, I appreciate what Christine said about the safe use of the crossing and user behaviour, but surely those are issues that you have to factor in at every single level crossing on the rail network. So a logical conclusion to this is you close every single crossing, whether or not it's pedestrian or road. There also wasn't an answer as to how Network Rail felt it was safe to allow Sustrans to have a coastal path which would be accessed by this crossing prior to 2011. I mean, forgive me if I'm being thick, but I don't see how we can go from something being safe to suddenly unsafe.
Okay.
I wasn't around, unfortunately, at the time when that was decided and discussed. I was around, but certainly not in this area, so I had nothing to kind of do with that. So I can't really answer what sort of information, consideration, assessment was actually made at that point. Certainly, there's a lot more people out now using crossings, using walking routes, out exercising, and it's promoted everywhere. So there is a lot more of a use of these routes now than there was probably previously. But like I say, I wasn't here, so I wasn't consulted. So I can't really answer that question, I'm afraid. With regards to what was your other question? Sorry,
What was the other question? It was around the MSLs and also the use of the crossing to access the coastal paths. I think you've probably answered them as far as you can.
Okay.
Today.
Thank you, Catherine. Before we go to any questions, I see Ryan Ellis has arrived. Ryan, have you got any news about Janet?
Thank you, Chair. Janet is just wrapping up with the Climate Change Committee in the Senate. She should be here within the next 12 minutes, we're hoping.
Okay, we'll carry on in the meantime. Thank you. Councillor Andrew Wood.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of questions, maybe Christine might not be able to answer them. On the back of what Harry's just said, and pointed out quite eloquently about the use of the path, according to the records or according to the figures, there's over 381,000 people have used a COB and walked or up and around this path. Maybe 40-odd thousand cyclists have shared. Now, obviously, they're not all shared that path at the same time, but common sense dictates that there is, of all these people, and I do believe, and I haven't got the figures in front of me, but since 1860, that level crossing has been open until 2011. I'd like to know there's been no reported accidents or incidents. So that's an interesting thing. Now, going back into the miniature stoplights, there's a picture of Pensarn down there. It shows a nice picture of Pensarn and it allocates it to being nice and easy, a nice clear line to see. It's a really good crossing. It stops you, the gates stop you, you can't go through. It's very, very safe. This would easily be adapted to this, where this crossing is. And the other point on that is that actually Pensarn, even though it looks good, has a limited visibility display, so caravans and so on and so forth. So we've had no incidents there as well. So the miniature stoplights, if properly installed and taken into account with the operating systems on the train and also the signals, are very safe. And they would make a perfectly good engineering solution. It's a simple solution to do. It's mitigating the risk, I know that. So I'd like to know, basically, and I'd like to sort of say I do agree with 5.1. Greg Robbins sums it up quite eloquently, He understands where officers are. but he believes that there is other solutions to be found. And I think this is exactly what I will be looking to suggest to you, Chair, as my way forward as a proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wood.
Can I just ask if there was a question in there for me?
I'm sure there was somewhere.
Accident figures for
Okay.
since 1860 to 2011 when you closed it.
Christine?
Right, I thought I was going to be talking about the I think it's not Pensan, I think it's Pennycath.
No, Pensan I talked about. Pensan is Hart's Caravan. That's what we were talking about before. The vintage stoplights there are easily used, very, very safe system. Preclude anybody going onto the track unless you're really stupid while there's a train coming. It's quite simple, red, white, noisy. There's a noise alarm on it. It stops anybody, and that goes straight to the beach. Exactly the same as this one. Goes straight onto the beach. So the thing you were talking about before, you know, the noise of the sea and the actual kids carrying the buckets of spades and parents with lots of bags, exactly the same. We've had no incidents there, and we've got 2 level crossings within about 50, 60 yards of each other. Very, very tight. So I would be interested to know.
Well, we've had
the risk.
we have had a couple of fatalities up there.
The suicides.
No, one of them was a fatality. It was accidental. There is a difference up there. There is no busy road for one, but also you've got very wide. You've got a lot of ground. So as you exit the railway, there's quite a large area before you get onto the path. And so there's plenty of room for people to come on and off the railway. Whereas at the crossing at footpath 73, you're right on the footpath, both sides of the railway. So there is no room for anybody to be waiting for cyclists to go by. Like you say, there's been lots of usage. So there is a risk of blocking back onto the railway at that location, which there isn't at the Pennycath one. You call it Pensan, we call it Pennycath, I'm afraid.
Okay, and
for that difference.
The line speed at Abergele is 60 or 70, whereas the line speed at this location, remind me please, Christine, what it is?
There's been an assumption made that the crossings on that part of the North Wales coast are remaining open and that we're not even looking at them. And that's a misconception, because we're looking at our high risk crossings. So we are looking at the crossings to see what we can do. So although they have red greens at the moment, that doesn't really reduce the risk as low as reasonably practicable at those crossings. And so we are looking at what we can do there to reduce the risk further.
Okay, so thank you for that, Christine. Andrew, I'm going to
John, just quickly, that confirms there seems to be a notion on National Rail's part, because both those crossings at Pensan are public rights of way across the tracks. So there seems to be an indication that even though these are very safe crossings, that there seems to be a policy of Network Rails to extinguish or look at extinguishing these. Yeah. So that worries me, John.
Okay, thank you for that. We are talking about
the policy for Network Rail is to keep people safe. It's not to just go around closing the crossings. So that's why we look at them, because they are high risk.
Thank you, Christine. Councillor Ken Stevens.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I did a walkabout there yesterday just to refresh myself about the situation and that. I take it that we're talking about where the steps are and where there's now a green mesh gate. That's the closed area, is it? What I couldn't understand about any of what's been said so far is that further up the road, there's a gated crossing together with lights and all the rest of the stuff. And that, I mean, even if this was to be replaced, it still wouldn't be disabled friendly. People with bikes and buggies, etc., or people who weren't too clever on the feet wouldn't be able to access it. From my point of view, safety has to be paramount. Even though this is a branch line, it has to be paramount. So the question I'd like to ask is, why is the level crossing further up the road not being considered as an alternative? Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Ken.
I'm happy, Chair, to come in on that if you want.
Who's speaking here? I can't see anybody.
Oh, sorry, it's Simon.
Simon, okay, thank you, Simon.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Kent. A very good point. Within the scope of work that we asked SCP to complete was also an assessment of the other two main crossing points onto the railway line, with regards to are they a suitable alternative. The feedback that we've had and is within the report is that both of those crossings are compliant and are safe crossings and are a suitable alternative for people to access the coastal path without having to cross the railway line or without having to cross at footpath 73.
Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Councillor Bob Squire.
Thank you, Chair. It was just a quick one from early on, really. Obviously, from my own background, as you will be aware, safety has to be a priority, because I could write a book on the number of accidents after there having been an incident beforehand. But nonetheless, the massive amount of feeling on this I've not witnessed before. So I realise that we are speaking for a large number of the public on this one. But when Mr. Wilkinson did his speech, as to whether the comment was made the crossing cannot be made safe for use. But Mr. Wilkinson said that it does not mean a bridge is not possible. Now, reading the reports, and I've read every single one, there are lots and lots of suggestions, many of which are being dispelled. But nevertheless, having read them all and then they're eliminated, every single time it comes back to a bridge, over the railway line, and that's the one thing that everybody is agreed on, is that a bridge would resolve it. I know the cost is an issue, but it's been done before. The lady from Network, I've forgotten her name, said that it's not practicable. So she's contradicting what Mr. Wilkinson said, that it does not mean a bridge is not possible. And I think that that is the one issue which would resolve this and would keep everybody happy. And why I would like to know why National Rail do not feel it's practicable, when Mr. Wilkinson said that it doesn't mean it's not possible. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bob. Andrew, are you going to answer that?
Yeah, thanks. Just perhaps we're getting a bit confused with the terminology here. That I don't think there is a contradiction there. I said that we'd accepted Networks Rail position that a bridge was not practicable. I gave some reasons why, but as far as it being possible, being practicable is not the same thing. And what the legislation requires us to do is assess whether a crossing can be made safe by reasonably practicable measures. So I don't think there was a contradiction there, but happy for Network Rail to come in and comment further on whether a bridge is practicable.
Thank you, Andrew. Christine, are you still there?
Hi, yeah, sorry. Yes, no, I agree. A bridge, no one's saying a bridge isn't possible, because anything these days seems to be possible, especially with the engineering side of things. However, it would be a very complex engineering feat to actually put a bridge in there, and the cost would way outstrip the safety measures. It wouldn't be deemed a good spend of public funds, which is something that we have to be able to justify.
Thank you, Christine. You okay, Bob?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Councillor Keith Eales.
Chair, can I, before I start, can I just highlight Councillor Ian was wishing to speak prior to myself. Do you want to let Councillor Ian come in first?
I didn't notice his hand, but I will let Ian.
It was a physical hand up, it was, rather than the
Tisio
yellow
siarad
hand up.
Ian? Tisio dod I mewn Ian?
Diolch yn fawr, Sygyrydd, a diolch hefyd I Keith am fod mor gwrtaeth. Dwi'n gwybod bod ni wedi trafod yn fras iawn am be dwi'n wedi godi. Mae Cynghorydd Andrew wedi siarad yn reit dwys amdano fo. Ond yn hanesyddol, yn y groesfan yma, faint o ddamweiniau wirioneddol drwg sydd wedi digwydd. Cos sgynna I ddim yn yn oes I, a dwi wedi byw ers yr oes ar braidd, gofio bod na ddim damwain wedi bod o gwbl ar y groesfan yma. Ond sy'n licio gwybod I mi helpu fi efo penderfyniad. Diolch.
Okay, so, sorry to interrupt, members. Are you having trouble with the translation? I can see a few frustrations.
Okay.
Translation, are you there? When you're translating, Councillor Jenkins' voice is not fading out. Can I leave that with you and your team to have a look at while the meeting continues?
Can I try and translate what Councillor Jenkins said, unless he wants to do it himself?
The translator will be able to provide a summary. Or...
Na I adael o I chi, Mr Cadeirydd. Mae chi fwy o ddawn na fi.
Diolch yn fawr, Councillor Jenkins. I'll do it for now while the translator tries to sort it out. Councillor Jenkins would like to know, as he's been around a very long time, he said, which we won't go into that. How many accidents of a serious nature have occurred at this point in the last, I don't know, 50, 60, 70 years? I think that's what he was asking. Thank you. Anybody want to answer that?
Well, yes, there hasn't been a serious accident as far as I'm aware on that level crossing. But should we be waiting for something serious to happen before we actually make the right decisions? So over the years, you know, the railway has been here a long time. And when it was first introduced, there wasn't the traffic, there wasn't the trains running, there wasn't the speed of the trains running, etc. Things have moved on. And in our society today, there's a lot more distractions, there's a lot more people out there rushing here, there and everywhere. There's a lot more trains running. We're wanting to run more trains, especially on the North Wales area. And everything changes. And so we can't really judge what's happening today and what will happen in the future by what's happened in the past. We need to look at what we've got now and the risks at the crossing. And it's whether those risks are acceptable or whether we feel they're not acceptable. And at the moment, we feel those risks are not acceptable and we can't make them acceptable. So I hope that answers the question.
Yes, it does. Thank you, Christine. All right, Mr. Jenkins. Yeah. Keith Eels, sorry, Keith, I know you're very kind. You're letting Ian go first.
Diolch, John. Thank you very much. There's a couple of points really. I've read the Network Rail report. I find it odd that the pictures in the report to try and explain the distance of vision seem to be in some sort of sepia mode or like an old-fashioned sort of photograph, but every other photograph showing that the lack of vision is in a clear, colourful picture, but the picture showing the train disappearing out of sight is in this weird sepia mode, like old-fashioned, it's all grainy. So I feel that's a little bit misleading in the report, really, by Network Rail. So whatever the reason is for that, to have poor quality images, I'm not sure. As for the crossing, I don't support the distinguishing order. I would like to support, as MP Mr. Miller has mentioned, the MSLs. at the crossing, and also making it a 90-degree crossing, exploring the ability to put that in as well. And as for Christine's comments about spending public money on a bridge, I'm sure was the same consideration given when an already High Court decision went to the appeal court. Then I think really if one is good for one, it's good for the other. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Eales. I'm going to stop you there because I understand that Janet Finn-Saunders, AM, is here with us. Is that right, Ryan?
I'm here.
Oh, there we are, Janet. Nice to see you, and thank you for joining us. I know you're very busy and you've had another meeting. I've explained to everybody. So we're in the middle of discussions, but you wanted to have an input, so please carry on.
Well, thank you, and good afternoon to all committee members. I think you're having a marathon session as well. I've been in Climate Change Committee within the Welsh Parliament since 9 this morning, but I was keen to have some input in this today. I did attend the hearing. I was quizzed by the barrister for 2.5 hours, and in fact it was information that was provided to me late, just before the hearing, that actually certainly helped in terms of evidence to win that hearing, to win that appeal. So you can imagine, I mean, this matter's been going on for 11 years now, and residents and stakeholders are really keen to have a resolution to this, but certainly I cannot support the rail crossing extinguishment order, but I have a bigger point of order I wish to raise that's a concern. I've made numerous representations on behalf of my constituents to the council throughout the whole process. And when I look at this report that you have before you today, there is absolutely no mention of my representations as one of the objectors. So that needs a correction on the record. It is disappointing. Councillor Greg Robbins, the cabinet members, only been made aware of this today, but that's probably my fault. Should have picked up on it perhaps a bit sooner. But I would ask really the head of department as to why my representations are not, my name's not even down in the list of objectors, and I've kept Geraint very busy on this over the time. So that's one point, Councillor Roberts, I'd like addressed.
Okay, but we will find out for you, Janet. We will find out.
Fabulous. And then, as far as I'm concerned, you have a letter. Have all members had the letter, a copy of the letter?
Yes,
have they read it? Have they all read it?
Your letter was circulated. Your letter of the 14th of January?
Great. Well, again, really, my point is to just reiterate some of the points there. I think that Networks Rail are very flawed themselves in their reasoning. When they advise that the cost cannot be justified for a cul-de-sac path. I mean, that's wrong. It is not a cul-de-sac path. I cannot see, I know I've seen the estimated costs for this, but at the end of the day, in law, we have won the battle. And now really, it's my opinion that the council should now be working on behalf, members and officers should be working on behalf of those people who want to see this access given again to this crossing. And it can be done. It can be done by means of a stepped bridge. And I certainly would not support the extinguishment order. And let's be honest, if the decision today went that way for an extinguishment order, and then it goes out to consultation, you're going to receive objections, then it's ultimately going to land with the Welsh Government. And I ask all members present today, there's often a criticism that too many decisions are made in Cardiff Bay. We have local democracy, and I feel that the sensible decision today would be to reject this extinguishment order and make sure that our council, is fully involved with this, rather than it ending up with the Welsh Government. I think that's all I have to say, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Please stay with us. We're in the middle of the discussion. If anybody wants to ask you a question, they'll put their little yellow hand up, I'm sure. I'm going to bring in Councillor Mike Priestley now. Mike is not a member of this committee, are you, Mike?
No, I'm not.
But I will allow you to speak. Go on.
Thank you, Councillor Roberts, for allowing me to speak. I'm not going to go too much into the history, as Andrew Wilkinson, explained it really elegantly. This has taken up part of my life since 2011 as an elected member. And basically why I've got my teeth stuck into this one is because in the early hours of one morning, I mean really early hours of one morning, Network Rail came along and stole our footpath. It's as simple as that. They took away a stile and they just fenced it all off. No consultation whatsoever. So that's why, and understandably, that's why many, hundreds of residents have been in touch with us. And I thank the team. I thank Robin. I thank Gitto before him, Janet, and the MP's office for all the work that they've done. So that's a little bit of the history from that. So, and yes, we did win at an inquiry, and yes, we won at the court, the High Court, and we won at the Court of Appeal. So, for it then to be said that put in this order today, I have to point out at the inquiry that I asked, one of the last questions I asked was, could this crossing be made safe? And Network Rail and the representatives at that inquiry, and I think there's a barrister, he had his way about him, didn't he, Janet? But basically, they said to me, yes, it could. So to see the approach from Network Rail in the report that they've given is astonishing, to be quite frank. So, and I do wonder if they spent the money they spent in the High Court and on barristers and legal fees, they'd probably go a fair way to provide a bridge. I would have thought so. So I am a little concerned about the negative approach from Network Rail regarding risk assessment, because if they risk assess me, I don't think I'd get out of bed in the morning, the way they've approached this. I will support my councillor colleagues in their objections. I will support Robin Miller, MP, Janet, who's just spoken, our member of the Senate, Mr. Julian Pitt, who makes some really good views, and these views need to be aired out before a decision could be made, I would say. Our Ramblers have made some really good points. Richard Brunson, the chair of the Estuary Users Group, has made some really good points. These need to be explored, and scrutinised, not just on a paragraph. So I also have concerns for all the users of the coastal path. I have concerns, and sustrans and what have you, basically because of if you like, the bully boy threats of Network Rail saying, well, if you go ahead with this and you don't close it, we'll have to close the coastal path. Well, I mean, they did exactly the same to me at the inquiry when the barrister threatened me with costs. And I tell you one thing, that was really not very nice at the time, because I just looking at it, and they're threatening us with tens and tens of thousands of pounds in costs when he said, we're going to go for costs for you. And he left us stew for a day and then came back and said, oh, I've taken advice off my client, we're not going to go for costs. Not very pleasant at all. So I don't have much time for them. I think it's fair to say that residents in Glanamore will argue that the trains are quiet, because I get a few complaints now and then, especially when they're coming round by Glanamore Road, the cottages. But basically, in reference to, there's been one near miss at this point, and I've not seen any documentation regarding that. So I have to say that I support all the reasons that have been made, and you've had copies of letters from Richard Brunson, Julian Pitt, and all, if you like, all the residents. Yes, yeah. So I mean, that all needs to be scrutinised before you can make a decision here, because all I see is challenge from all these people, and not so much challenge from our highways or the independent advisors. I think we just need, I honestly don't feel you can make a decision today based on what's in front of you. So there's just so much to say. I thank you for letting me speak, Chair. You can see I'm passionate about this. They should have just consulted with us and we wouldn't be here now, would we? But they just come away and stole our footpath, and we had to fight hammer and nail to get it recognised as so.
Thank you, Councillor Mike. Thank you. I can see that you're very passionate about it. I have one hand up, which is Councillor Harry Sowell. Allow you to come back, and then we'll go to closing statements. I think I can't see anybody else in, and then we'll go to our vote. Councillor Harry.
Oh, thanks, Chair. I was going to offer to make you a proposal, if that would help. But just first of all, just for Jenks's benefit around usage of this rail line, I think if you go back, what, 50, 60 years ago, this rail line used to serve 2 decent-sized freight depots, a medium-sized railway station and a large railway station. Today it serves 0 freight depots, 1 small railway station and 1 medium one. So I'm not sure where this suggestion that there's been a huge ballooning of rail traffic over, say, the last few decades has come from. I was going to say, I don't think Network Rail really made a persuasive case, so I was going to propose that we don't make the extinguishment order. If Network Rail want to go away, look at some for technical suggestions and still can't make it safe, and they can come back to us in the future, can't they? One question I did have, and I hope Simon can help with this, is obviously, and Mike's alluded to this, Network Rail suggested they would be looking to force the closure for coastal path if we don't make this order. So what steps can this council take to protect that coastal path and keep it open? I can see in Robin's consultation, he's made a suggestion that we create, or we go down the route of a public path creation order to protect that community asset. I know, being based in Llandudno, a lot of my residents use it to get into Conway and Llandudno Junction. So I'd like to know what options are open to this council to protect that coastal path, should we choose not to make the order.
Is that to Simon? Is that a question to Simon?
So, Councillor Harry, in terms of immediate steps, then we couldn't take any immediate steps. It's private land. It's a path that is used with the permission of the relevant landowner. And has a license. If said license is revoked by the landowner, that is their gift to do so. And we would then need to look at what powers we could use to reopen the footpath at a later date. But yeah, we're not the landowners, and highway legislation and the creation of new public rights of way. As we've seen, we're many months after the initial application discussing whether to make an order now. We're going to be having similar meetings and similar discussions in the future. So yeah, there are no immediate steps because it's not our land, and we don't have the powers to instruct Network Rail to keep it open.
Okay.
Thank you, Simon. I've just had a late hand, Councillor Abdul Khan.
Thank you, Chair. Just for some clarification, really. I had just heard from our Senate member, Janet. Thank you for your contribution. We can make the decision today, but according to the recommendation 2.1, if there has been an objection, we need to go to 2.2 and refer that to the Welsh Government for determination. Can somebody clarify that, whether we can make a decision today?
Yeah, I think I had that problem at the beginning, Councillor Abdul, but I think I realised, but I'll go to Andrew. He can tell you.
Thank you, Chair.
Yes, thanks for the question, Abdul, and sorry if it appears confusing in the recommendation. If a decision is, 2.2 refers to if a decision is made to make the order today, then the order would be advertised, and if objections are received to the order after it's advertised, then it's referred to Welsh Government. If the decision is made not to make the order today, that's it. Nothing happens as far as the council is concerned. But then, as I explain, is in the report in section, where are we? Find the.
Well, Andrew finds this. Can I request that I'm in with the recommendation later on? I'd like to propose, but that will be for later on. Thank you. mute myself now.
Thank you, Councillor Khan.
Okay, so I think it was towards the end, was it? Where are we?
Is it 4.2, Andy?
Oh, it's in 335 and 336. So if there's a decision made not to support the extinguishment order, then nothing more happens. 2-point recommendation 2.2 doesn't happen, and then but then Network Rail may apply directly to Welsh Government for an extinguishment if we don't make the decision, and then it would be determined by the Minister under maybe a public inquiry, maybe written representations. However, the Planning and Environment decision, Wales decides to deal with it. But that's assuming that Network Rail do apply directly. They may not. We don't know that. But yeah, if you decide not to make the order, 2.2 doesn't apply. And apologies, I should have made that clear.
Okay, I have one more speaker, and then we'll go to closing statements and then the votes. Councillor Andrew Wood.
2 points on this, Chair. Thanks again. I'm going to get back to you. If we don't make the order, then it's going to go to the Welsh Minister, Andrew. It's surely then going to go out to consultation, and the council will be involved, as in the reports we've already previously done, and all the work that's happened beforehand. So surely it's not just for a minister to rub a stamp on a table in down South Wales, is it? So that's one. So if you can just clarify that, because it's slightly, not misleading is the wrong word, but it's going to go to full-blown planning inspectorate, I would have thought, yeah?
Well,
on this.
No, Andrew, I think Andrew Wilkinson made it quite clear that if it goes
No, he didn't.
Well, I'll let him say it again then. Go on, Andrew.
Yeah, if you refer to 335 and 336. So again, if the decision's made not to make the order, there is nothing yet for the Minister or the Planning and Inspectorate to determine. It's only if there's a direct application from Network Rail, which they are able to do under the legislation. And then it would be most likely be a public inquiry, but wouldn't be in our power to decide how the Minister decides on a direct application for an extinguishment. It could be written representations, hearing, public inquiry, but we wouldn't have any control over that. But I would think it would most likely be a public inquiry.
Okay, I would have thought so as well.
Yeah.
And secondly,
Councillor Angie, I think what's important is just following up what Andy said. Whilst the first task that the Welsh Minister would make would be to write to us to inquire and investigate why we've been unable to make a decision. So we would have to provide the reports that we've presented today, and then they would then review that to make a determination as to how best they would then carry out their further checks and what kind of process they would need to go through, and whether the authority's decision-making process was correct, and that would then be used to determine how they would then make a decision.
Okay, well, thanks for starting, Simon. That's what I alluded to. I have got a question for you, Simon. You did actually mention that the footpath, which isn't a public one, it's on private road, but it's been there for, I presume, is it 16, 18 years? Can members of the public not ask for it to be recognised as a public right-of-way, even though it is private? I know it doesn't fall into the 20-year rule, but taking it forwards, we know that obviously public rights-of-way and rights-of-way officers states that it normally takes about 4 to 5 years to do something like this. So it would be a feasible thing to do and to safeguard that path as well. We should do it now is before it's closed. That's a good way to go before.
I think that at either end of where the licensed path is, that there's actually signage there that tells people that they are accessing the land which is privately owned via a license, and that there is no intention to create a public footpath on said land. So I think that we would need to investigate that further, depending on sort of what the determination is. We would need to look at what that actually means in terms of people's right to roam onto it or access onto private land. But it's not as straightforward as some of the other paths issues that we're looking at in that this is a licensed path as opposed to a path that has historic access rights.
Yeah, thank you. I do understand that. But
Thank you, Simon.
Thank you.
This really is the last one now. Andrew, you've got your hand up. Andrew Wilkinson, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, just to clarify, and as Simon says, there is a difference between a path that's used under license and a path because that then cannot be claimed by usage. As some of the objectors have said in their representations, there is a potential means for footpaths to be created sort of in an adversarial situation, if you like, against the council, against the landowner. Very rarely used. There we would need legal advice on how that applies to a path that's under license, and also consider how that would then relate to perhaps other projects where we were looking to make agreements with landowners for public path agreements, that then once we'd got an agreement and built it, we went down the road of saying, actually now that's we're going into an adversarial position and claiming it as a public path. But certainly the coastal path is absolutely a critical asset for us, and we will be doing everything we can to keep that available to the public and using all legal means possible to do that. And we've already taken legal advice on it. So
that's very good to hear.
Yeah.
Very good to hear. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Mr. Wilkinson. I'm now going to go to closing statements. I'm going to bring Christine back. Christine, would you like to briefly state your case again? And I am sure that Mr. Robin Miller would like to close for the opposition. Thank you, Robin. You're very kind. Christine, are you still with us?
Yeah, sorry, I am.
There you go.
Thank you for today. It's been quite interesting listening to everyone's concerns, and I understand all the passion that's around this. But I would just like to make it quite clear: this is nothing to do about whether the right over the railway at that location is legal or not, or whether we won the public inquiry or not. This is purely about safety. It's about keeping the members of the public safe, the people that are going to be using that path, that are going to be accessing the cycle route. And it is a lovely area. You've got loads of tourists, you know, that this isn't us as Network Rail. You see Network Rail as a big bad monster. This isn't us as a big bad monster. We are literally just trying to do a job to keep your constituents, your members of the public safe in that area. And there's too many risks at that location for us to be able to mitigate all of them without closing it. And even putting a bridge in is closing the crossing.
Thank you very much. Robin Miller, please.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, can I just thank everybody for giving this such careful attention? The debate's been really worthwhile listening to, and I'm very grateful for that. You may remember I said I had two objectives. One was that residents' voices would be heard, and I'm absolutely convinced that that has happened today, for all the contributions both here and in writing, and to the member of the Senedd, Janet Finch-Saunders, for coming along and making their points as well, for Councillor Mike for his very passionate comment, but also the engagement of committee members in this. I think residents can be absolutely sure that they have been heard today by the council and by due process in the council, so I welcome that. That brings me to the second priority, which I agree with Christine from Network Rail. This is about safety. And as I said in my opening remarks, this is a process by which we establish what is safe. And I understand Network Rail's perspective of saying that there are risk concerns and therefore they can't countenance it. And as I indicated, this is a pattern I've seen in their behaviour across the UK, elsewhere in the UK. And I'm seeing that again today, and I have no objection to that. That's perfectly understandable and right for them. The question is, how do we get to a point where we understand what is safe for this crossing and for residents here? And it seems to me, from what I've heard, that whichever decision the committee reaches, this will go to a public inquiry in some form. Someone will not be happy with the outcome, and that will go to an inquiry. And I think, certainly on the basis of evidence, I would suggest from the submissions, the objections that have been heard today, that it seems to me that there are still options to be considered and information that is being requested, and that will probably need to be heard at a public inquiry. And the question then for the committee is whether the council wishes to issue the extinguishment order today or not, on the basis that that is going to be tested at an inquiry at a subsequent date. But can I thank the committee again for their consideration on this, officers for the work they've put into it, and Chairman for your work holding it all together this afternoon.
Thank you very much. Right, I think we'll go to the vote now. We've had a wonderful debate. I've enjoyed every minute of it.
Chair, can I just pop in just to assist the committee? Two quick points. Obviously, members have debated the matter and they've asked questions of speakers. Might be worth just checking before you go to the vote whether members wish to make any general comments other than just what the speakers have said. And the other point was just to remind members of the options on paragraph 4.1, 4.2 of the report, which is set out on page 13. The question before members this afternoon is whether they wish to make the extinguishment order under section 118A of the Highways Act, as has been outlined. The key consideration there, as has been outlined by Mr. Wilkinson, is in terms of section 118A1. And it's about the stage of actually making the order. And the key question there is whether the council considers it to be expedient in the interest of safety of members of the public to make that order. I would also just remind members that should they decide to go with option 4.2, i.e. not to make the extinguishment order, that members will need to come up with clear reasons with regard to that to protect the council. Hope that's helpful, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alex. So therefore, there we have it. So the recommendation is to make the order, as I see it, or not to make the order. I think that's the choice. I'm sure that's what Alex was saying. So could we have a proposer for making the order, please? We have.
Chair.
Sorry.
Hang on. I've got two speaking at the same time here now.
Sorry, Chair.
You go first, Ken.
Well, Chair, I've not heard a single argument in favour of why the existing level crossing won't be a safe alternative. So I would like to propose that we make the order, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ken. Do we have a seconder? Well, I'll second that, Councillor, in order to move things on. Right, so we'll go to the vote then. Who is in favour? Are you going to go around everybody, Jane?
I will do a roll call, members, but I think Councillor Wood wants to come in quickly.
Well, unless he wants to second instead of me, no.
John, it was a part of the Councillor Harry Saville proposed to start with, and was second his proposal, which came as not to accept the extinguishing order.
I think it'll be the same thing in the end.
Yes, you're probably right, but just for clarity, I know you're at home early, but just for clarity. All right.
Sorry, Councillor Wood. We'll do it this way. So, who else is in favour of the making the order? That's the vote, really.
Chair, can I just clarify?
Yes.
If you go to the vote, if you go to the vote on the officer recommendation first, that's been moved and seconded, if that then fails, you can then take another vote to actually refuse the order with the reasons.
Okay, so we've got the officer's recommendations. We've got a proposer and a seconder, and we'll ask Jane to go round.
Okay, thank you, members. Please indicate if you're for, against, or abstaining. Councillor Mary Doyle.
Against.
Councillor Keith Eales.
Against.
Councillor Ian Jenkins.
Obliged.
Councillor Abdul Khan.
Against.
Councillor John Roberts.
Obliged.
Councillor Bob Squire.
Obliged.
Councillor Ken Stevens.
You muted, Ken.
Sorry for making the audio.
Councillor Andrew Wood.
You muted, Andrew.
Sorry, Chair. That's against making the extinction order.
Okay, thank you, members.
Chair, is there a reason why I haven't voted?
Oh,
apologies, Harry. I had you. Yeah, that's my fault. I do apologise.
That's fine. Against.
Okay, thank
Has
you.
everybody voted? Let's make that make sure. Right. Okay, fine.
That's 4 in favour and 5 against.
Okay, so we go to Alex. Would you like to help me out here, please?
Yeah, Chair. So the after recommendation has been defeated. So you need to do a second vote to not make the extinguishment order and have the reasons clear for that. I suggest, and Andy Wilkinson may well wish to jump in to clarify, I suggest from the debate that the reasons not to make it are in accordance with the protecting the interests of highway users under Section 130 of the Highways Act.
Okay, you are breaking up a bit, Alex. I didn't understand all that, but maybe Andrew Wilkinson could take over. Could you turn your video off, Alex? You might be better. The sound might be better if you turn your video off. There you go. Try it now.
Better, Chair. Sorry, Chair. Yes. Yeah, I'm back if you can hear me, Chair. Just to clarify, when members take the vote, the next one, they need to come up with reasons as to why they are not going to make the extinguishment order. I guess on the basis of the debate that's taken place, that it will be in order to protect the interests of highway users under Section 130 of the Highways Act. But Mr. Wilkinson may well wish to jump in and clarify that first.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think I'll leave it to members to come up with reasons, but I think I would agree with the solicitor's recommendation, at least include those words about protecting the rights of highway users under Section 130, but there might be some wider words that you need to use,
right,
or want to use, sorry.
So could we have somebody to propose that? Harry, you were quite happy to propose it earlier on.
Yeah, Chair, just to proceed.
Excuse me, could you please calm down? Because I can hear all kinds of noises.
Can everybody please mute yourself if you're not speaking? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll say it again. Harry, you were going to make a proposal earlier on.
Yeah, I was. Could I just check? Is Alex with Network Rail or representing Network Rail in this? Could I just double check?
Sorry, sir. No, I am representing the council.
Council.
Thank you.
Many thanks. Could you just repeat the justification you gave us earlier, Alex?
If members are going to vote on the resolution to not make the extinguishment order, they need clear reasons to do that. I suggested that on the basis of the discussions that have taken place, you might want to look at the question of protecting the interests of highway users under Section 130 of the Highways Act 1980. And I think Mr. Wilkinson suggested that that might be in order, but there might also be wider reasons which members may wish to put forward.
Okay. Yeah. On that basis, Harry, could you make that?
Yeah, I'm happy to propose that we don't make the order on the those bases. I think from what we've said, Network Rail haven't established on balance the need to close or extinguish the footpath. So,
okay, can we have a seconder for that, please?
I'm happy
Councillor-
to second that, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Abdul Khan. And could you go again, please, Jane?
Yes, by all means. Members, please indicate.
For, against or abstaining. Councillor Mary Doyle?
Sorry. The vote. Can you just repeat again what we're voting for?
We are under, I'm going to ask Harry to say that again. Can you hear us, Mary?
Yeah.
Okay, go on, Harry, please.
thanks, Chair. The proposal was that we don't make the order for the reasons I think rather eloquently put out by Alex.
Right, Mary.
Yeah, I agree with Harry. Don't make the order.
Okay. Thanks, Jane. You carry on.
Councillor Keefield?
To support. Sorry, it's a noise. Sorry.
You're in favour? Okay, thank you. Councillor Ian Jenkins?
Yn erbyn.
Councillor Abdul Khan?
Obliged.
Councillor John Roberts?
Yn erbyn.
Councillor Helen Saville?
For.
Councillor Bob Squire?
For, I was going to add in the interests of public safety as well.
Okay.
Councillor Frank Stevens?
Against, in the interest of public safety.
Councillor Andrew Wood?
Just about hear you there, Jane. I am for not extinguishing the. Sorry, start again. I am based on the fact that Network Rail needs to investigate all the engineering solutions, make greater efforts for the MSLs and trackside platform solutions. Operating train systems can be altered and safety-related procedures can be forwarded. I am against an extinguishing order for that level crossing. Thank you.
Members, that's 6 in favour and 3 against.
Okay, well, that concludes the meeting. I'd like to thank you very much for your presence today and your input. It's been very interesting. I'm sure it's been a thoroughly good debate, and I thank Robin Miller for his words that he feels it has, and the public at large can thank the councillors here today for their involvement and their concern about the area. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chair.
Thanks,
Chair. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you all. Bye. Have a good the rest of the day. Good afternoon.
Oh, thank you. Just before I leave though, Chair, I would like a response from the department as to why my representations weren't logged on the report.
Okay, I've made a note of that, Janet, and I'll make sure that it gets to the right place.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be writing in anyway, but it would be, you know, it would have been good really to have had a response today, but no worries. Thanks for everything that you've done today, and yeah, we'll see what happens next.
Yeah.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very
Bye.
much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you. Thank you, Alex, for helping me out there. Thank you, Simon.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Chair,
Hello.
just a quick one. I was recorded as not supporting the extinguishing order, wasn't I?
Yes.